So what kind of services does your office provide? You provide the same thing as all these big guys, right?
For the most part, yeah. I know some of these big guys, their big thing is offering the breadth of all services. I try to do as much as I can because my biggest thing, especially again, when you're in a small practice like that, patients, they don't necessarily want to go out anywhere. They don't want you to send them to a specialist. They'd rather if you can do the work to do it. I mean, I do everything. I call it family and general dentistry. So I do see kids. I think I've seen your kids since they were 2.
Yep.
So we see lots of kids. I always joke it's 2 to 92.
Right.
So we'll see them whatever age come. I do as much work as I can. I mean, obviously we do the bread and butter, the fillings, crowns, dentures. I take out a lot of teeth.
Right.
It's not my preferred thing, but sometimes you have to do it. But we do take a lot of teeth. Every so often we'll do some root canals, depends on what's needed.
Okay.
We're storing implants. That's what I like about my job is it's a little bit different every day.
Welcome to another episode of Best of Johnston County, brought to you by Breeden Law Office. Our host, Jonathan Breeden, an experienced family lawyer with a deep connection to the community, is ready to take you on a journey through the area that he has called home for over 20 years. Whether it's a deep dive into the love locals have for the county or unraveling the complexities of family law, Best of Johnston County presents an authentic slice of this unique community.
Hello, and welcome to another edition of the Best of Johnston County Podcast. I'm your host, Jonathan Breeden, and today we have with us Dr. Tim Sims, a local dentist here at 4042 who's been here pretty much since I got here in 2000. We're going to talk to him about how he ended up at the 4042 Cleveland community, what his business provides, things he's learned, why he loves Johnston County, and what he's looking forward to in the future for this area in Johnston County. Welcome, Dr. Sims.
Thank you for having me.
No problem. So you've been my dentist since I got here. So tell the court a little bit, not the court, Golly, I think I'm in court. I got to quit going to court, right? No, anyway, tell the listeners.
What did I come to?
I know, right? Tell the listeners a little bit about yourself. I know you're from Garner and how you ended up here.
Yeah, born and raised in Garner. I've been here basically my whole life. My wife as well. I went to Garner High School and then went to Carolina, which I know you love. I went to Carolina, did 4 years undergrad, and then did straight into dental school, did 4 years of dental school. And then when it came time to figure out where we wanted to be, this area came up as a quick number one choice. And so that's what we did.
So when did you open your practice here?
So I've been here January 2002. I finished dental in 2000, worked for a big group practice in Rocky Mount for a year and a half, and then started my practice here, started from scratch.
Right. And you've been in the same location the whole time.
I have been in the exact same location. It's a great location. It's sitting right at the junction of 42 and 40.
Right behind the McDonald's in that building right there.
Yep.
I actually share a parking lot with the McDonald's.
I do.
And I believe the Huebners built that building.
They did.
And they had the Huebner family McDonald's offices there. And then there's been a cleaners on the end almost the entire time.
Almost the entire time. Yeah.
Right. Quality Cleaners. It's changed ownerships, I know, three times. But yeah, and at one point, the Huebners had a McDonald's training center in there, which is why I think they originally built the building, where they had a makeshift McDonald's, and they would bring people in and they would train them on where to stand and how to do the fries. And
it literally looked like you walked into a McDonald's. It had the counter, it had the menu, it had everything in it. And we would routinely have people come into the office and ask, why is that McDonald's not open? So yeah, that was there right when we opened, and then it transitioned into the cleaners.
Right.
Yeah.
Oh my goodness. Yeah. And of course the Huebners have just sold all of them in the area, and they have now retired. And maybe we'll have them on one of the podcasts, talk about their experiences. They're really amazing.
Incredibly supportive to me when I first opened. They're great landlords. So yeah, we're missing them.
Right. So I guess when you came here, what was your vision for the kind of practice that you wanted to have, and have you succeeded?
Yeah, it's a story still being written, but I like to think I'm being successful. Yeah, my vision was to be a small town, to have a small town type office. I wanted to be like, I put it in my advertising, we're a hometown dentist. And that's really what I wanted. I mean, it's, a lot of times I think some people go into a health office, doctor's office, dental office, and you just kind of feel like you're there and getting churned through as fast as possible. I think that's, we could get into the depth of all that, but it's my thing where I wanted people to come in, feel like you're visiting friends, really, try and get them in as quickly as possible, make sure they don't wait too long. pay one-on-one attention to them. I try not to, usually with my schedule, I usually see one person at a time for me. I try not to jump around chairs if I can help it. And like I say, try to get people out as quickly as possible because I know time is important.
Right. And you're the only dentist there in your practice, correct?
That is correct.
So people that come to your practice are always going to see you,
See me.
and you're able to build those relationships with them as you've built the relationship with me and my family over the years,
That's right.
which is a little different than some of the other dentists in the area where they're bigger and you don't see the same dentist every time.
Yeah, I mean, that was my purpose. I mean, I felt like, my memories of going to the dentist when I was younger was, we would go into the small office, we would sit there, you'd hear the noises, you'd smell the smells. I mean, that's a given. But we would go in, it was Dr. Kitchell was his name, and I would see Dr. Kitchell, and Dr. Kitchell was the doctor I saw, and that was who I got comfortable with. And I was never fearful of the dentist.
Right.
And actually enjoyed going. He was a super nice man. And that's always what was in my mind about going to the dentist. So I wanted the same thing for my practice. Those bigger guys, they provide great service. There's plenty of people out there with teeth, plenty of people out there who need dental care. So they provide a good service. But I like, especially in this area where we've got a couple of those guys here, I feel like I'm a good alternative to that.
Right. Well, and your practice is like what I'm used to. I grew up in Laurinburg. I went and saw Dr. Slaughter, who for my whole entire childhood, as did my parents, it was just him. And similar to you, he figured out a way to keep the same dental assistants and dental hygienists basically my entire childhood. And, and it was kind of like family. You did this every 6 months. I think my dad was his accountant. Laurinburg's not a big place. Garner was not a big place when you grew up. It's gotten a lot bigger. So I get that you decided to sort of mimic what you saw.
Yeah. And I thought Johnston County would be perfect for that. I mean, especially this area. I'm sure every single guest that comes on here tells you Johnston County's growing, Johnston County's growing. But it's crazy to me that I've been here 22 years now, and it was growing a lot when we opened.
Right.
And now it's still growing. It's just, I don't think that's going to stop. And that makes for me, it kind of validates the decision to be here.
Right. You were from Garner, and this is technically Garner at this intersection if you go by the postal code, even though we're not in the town of Garner here at 4042. And I guess, as I keep saying on all of these episodes, it's not going to be 4042 much longer. It's going to be 4039 as they're going to renumber Highway 42 here between Highway 50 and Highway 70 to Highway 39 here in the next 2 years. And I think we'll see that completed, I believe, by the end of 2025 is what I'm hearing. And that has to do with the fact that 70 bypass, exit 309 off of I-40 is going to become I-42, and they don't want to confuse the drivers. So they're going to confuse everyone else. So to me, it's going to be 4042, even if it becomes 4039. But no, I'm from Laurinburg, and I came here because this area was growing and it was an underserved area for lawyers. And when you got here, it was an underserved area for dentists. It's hard to believe, but Johnston County is still technically considered a legal desert based on the number of law offices in the county. We got a lot of lawyers that live here to work in Raleigh, but those of us who live here in Johnston County, work here in Johnston County, there's really, I guess, if you count, one for every 1,000 people, I think, is what they define as a legal desert. And I think Johnston County qualifies. I don't know how they do it for dentists, but I know
it's the same. It's a per 1,000 capita.
Right.
And I don't know that I would give you specific numbers. I know there's about a little over 5,000 dentists in North Carolina, and I'm sure it's the same with lawyers. They set up in Wake County.
Right.
They set up in Durham County.
Right.
Set up in Mecklenburg.
Right.
Set up in New Hanover.
Right.
They're going to hit those massive, those major cities, and then everything else kind of falls away. I think I read somewhere there's a handful of counties that have less than 4 dentists in the whole county.
Yeah.
And there might be a couple that don't have, maybe one.
Well, there are now counties that are down to like 1 or 2 lawyers out in northeastern North Carolina.
So the rural areas are always considered the desert.
Right. Right. No, and that's the same thing when, and I was fortunate, when I was trying to decide where I was going to put my business, I had a professor said, if you want to be around Raleigh, because I was a Wolfpack fan, I'd just gone to NC State. He goes, just don't be in Raleigh. Like, there are a lot of great places around Wake County that, because he said Wake County had too many lawyers. And I would argue that Wake County probably still has too many lawyers per capita, but where Johnston and Harnett and Lee do not. And I think dentists are the same way. As people want to live in the cities, they want those amenities for their families. Right. And so
there's a dense packed population of dentists, just like there's a dense packed population of lawyers in these areas. They're doing okay.
Right.
It's not like they're getting in there and they
not
can't
having
find
any work.
patients. I mean,
Correct.
They wouldn't go there if they couldn't find the work. So.
Right. So what kind of services does your office provide? You provide the same thing as all these big guys, right?
For the most part, yeah. I mean, I know some of these big guys, their big thing is offering the breadth of all services. I try to do as much as I can because my biggest thing, especially again, when you're in a small practice like that, patients, they don't necessarily want to go out anywhere. They don't want you to send them to a specialist. I mean, they'd rather if you can do the work to do it.
Right.
So, I mean, I do everything. I call it, it's family and general dentistry. So, I mean, I do see kids. I mean, I think I've seen your kids since they were 2.
Yeah.
So we see lots of kids. I always joke it's 2 to 92.
Right.
So we'll see them whatever age come. I do as much work as I can. I mean, obviously we do the bread and butter, the fillings, fillings, crowns, dentures.
Right.
I take out a lot of teeth.
Right.
It's not my preferred thing, but sometimes you have to do it.
Right.
But we do take a lot of teeth. Every so often we'll do some root canals, depends on what's needed.
Okay.
We're storing implants. Yeah, I mean, it's like I say, that's what I like about my job is it's a little bit different every day.
Right. That's what I love about my job. If you do family law, you have no idea what's going to walk in the door. You're not going to get bored for sure.
Yeah.
Have family law questions? Need guidance to navigate legal challenges? The compassionate team at Breeden Law Office is here to help. Visit us at www.breedenfirm.com for practical advice, resources, or to book a consultation. Remember, when life gets messy, you don't have to face it alone.
So let's talk a little bit about, in general, the common mistakes that you see people make that lead to dental problems. I know people really should floss every day, and I'm not always the best at that, but just some of the most common things to sort of educate the audience.
Yeah, I mean, let's see. The most common thing at this point, there's 3 things that lead to a cavity. You got to have the environment, which is the tooth. You got to have, the bacteria, which everybody has regardless. And then you got to have, the fuel for the bacteria to create the cavity, which is sugar. It's one of those 3 things. I mean, nowadays it's going to come down to, are you brushing properly? It's one thing to pick up the toothbrush and put it in the mouth for, 10, 15 seconds. But if you're not hitting every surface and you're not, really getting at it, doing a good job of it, then you're probably not, you're probably going to end up getting a cavity. The other thing is, like I say, when I was talking about the sugar, I mean, the diet nowadays is massive. I mean, you figured between sodas and sports drinks, the amount of, sweet tea, all these fancy coffees, as I look at her fancy coffee, the sugar, the diet is huge. I mean, all these processed foods and processed sugars, it definitely leads to a higher cavity rate.
Right.
But that is the most common thing.
Right. Energy drinks, you've talked about energy drinks because of the sugar content in those.
Sugar content, I mean, caffeine's a whole different subject, but sugar content, acidity, you pick up, some of these drinks, you go through them and you start listing all the contents, and it's, it's high fructose, high sucrose, citric acid, because you take you've got that sugar and then you mix it with the acid, and the acid just is stripping any protective coating off the tooth. And then you're jamming it with a sugar bath. So we see it a lot.
So would you say the rate of cavities have gone up in the 22 years you've been here?
I mean, I don't know that it's gone up. I mean, it's just one of those things where I see it so often. I see it so often that you're not going to say, I definitely don't think it's going anywhere at this point.
Right. I got you.
Yeah.
I got you. So I mean, I think that's interesting. And I've been fortunate that I don't think I've had any cavities, even though I sometimes do too much sugar. Yeah. But I've asked you this question before, so I'll ask you this on this. Are electric toothbrushes better than non-electric toothbrushes?
Without a doubt.
They are?
Without a doubt.
Okay. And why is that?
Yeah. Well, they're the movement, they're just more efficient at cleaning. I always tell patients this because, we sell Oral-B brushes in the office. And everybody always says, are Oral-B better? And I said, my stance is always the same. If I had an Oral-B rep come in here, he's going to tell you Oral-B is better than Sonicare. And if I had a Sonicare rep come in here, he's going to tell you Sonicare. And they're going to produce studies to show that.
Right.
I mean, both of them will have studies shown that are, footnote, that are done by their people. But all the independent studies will without a doubt say electric is better than manual.
Okay.
So I don't care if you go buy a $10,
right.
$10 battery powered, whatever,
right.
cheap spin brush.
Right.
It's still going to be better than a manual brush.
I got you. Yeah, I was fortunate a few years ago. I think my mom for Christmas gave me one of the Sonic Fusion ones, toothbrushes. You can buy it. Best Buy or whatever, and I've used it ever since. And I wasn't getting really cavities since then. I haven't got any cavities since I got it, but I've enjoyed it. I do think it seems to work better, right? I think it just, and I'm one of those people who's not going to spend a ton of time brushing, but it's doing more in that 15 or 20 seconds than a regular brush would, just because of the vibrations of the brush.
Yeah, and it's different too, because someone may you're going to go to a store and you're going to see these brushes that are $160, $150,
right?
And some people say, I can't justify that money. And that's why I always say, well, find one that you can.
Right.
Or you can always look at it that this is something that's going to, you brush your teeth. You're supposed to brush your teeth at least twice a day. But, that's something you're going to get a lot of use out of. And the benefits are massive. And if you can spend that much for a toothbrush and not have to spend $200-$300 on a cavity to be filled,
that's true.
It weighs,
that's true.
It far outweighs the downside.
Well, you do have to make sure you change the heads on those electric brushes, just like you change toothbrushes as they start to get loose and lose their form and
splayed.
Right. So you got to make sure you do that. Yep. Do you see any, I don't know, with AI and stuff, do you see any changes coming in the dental world in the next 5 to 10 years?
It's interesting you asked me that question because, 4 days ago, I just had my dental rep come in and he just mentioned that there's a new product coming out, AI, that the process is basically aiding in diagnosis. It's not going to tell you this is what it is, but what it does is it actually takes the x-rays that we take. If you've ever been to the dentist, you take bite wing x-rays, the ones we put in there and you bite together on, and they show us. The purpose is to show us the in-betweens, show us between the teeth, because that's one of the common areas to get cavities. You actually take the x-rays, put it in through this computer program with AI, and the AI will actually, using the grayscale of the x-rays, will diagnose. And I say diagnose. It will show you where there are changes in the grayscale, which is what normally we're visually looking for with our human eyes.
Oh, okay.
But they can actually break down, the digitize it and show you where the decay is.
Okay. How about that?
Yeah.
Well, back to the whole dental desert thing. Are dentists already doing diagnoses over Zoom or whatever in some of these more rural areas? I don't know how that works because, you need an x-ray and they can't actually look at the mouth.
Yeah. It's funny because I know, telemedicine is such a huge thing right now for basic medicine. But I'm not sure teledentistry has become quite as large. I would have thought with, especially with COVID and shut down and everybody trying to do things remotely, that you would have seen a little more of that. But because, I don't know, I feel like dentistry is a little more hands-on.
Right.
That we need to get in there. It's easy for me to say I need to take an x-ray and then I can look at an x-ray over a computer monitor. That's easy.
Right.
But to actually fix and go in and do, sometimes you got to kind of go in and be a little, it's got to be hands-on.
Right. No, I understand that would be probably a more difficult thing to do. I was just curious as to how technology can help, deal, we're working with that, the North Carolina Bar Association and, trying to make it easier for virtual appearances in some of these more rural counties so attorneys can represent people from several counties away in court. That's one way they're trying to address the legal desert. Of course, it's a whole different thing than dentistry, but I was just curious as to what you had heard there. Yeah. Have you had people, I don't know, maybe this is because of what I have to deal with, if you had people coming in that are just trying to get pain pills from you, you know what I mean? Where they're coming in and and maybe they're just trying to see if you'll give them some sort of that. And how do you deal with that?
Yeah. The short answer is yes.
Okay.
I have. I will say that it seems to have dropped off a little bit in the most recent years. Early on, it wouldn't be uncommon for me to have somebody come in and, I'm going to use the word mimic. Basically,
Right.
they would come in and say, this tooth is hurting, is there anything you can do? We'd go through all the tests. They would give us, the answers to the tests that they thought we wanted to hear. And then we would prescribe pain medicine. And then, I've actually had instances where we would prescribe pain medicine. They'd take it to the pharmacy. Pharmacy calls me and says, this person just filled another prescription from somebody else.
Oh,
so they're doctor shopping.
Right, right.
But there's been such a focus on the opioid epidemic in the last 5 years or so that, the establishment has done a lot of things to help sort of curb it. One of the things that they've done is there's actually a controlled substance reporting system now where, once a provider like myself is registered, we can go in and I can look up and say, okay, Jonathan Breeden is here. I'm thinking about prescribing him some controlled substances. I'll look up Jonathan Breeden and it will show me what you've had filled by the pharmacist in the last 2 years.
Oh, I did not know that.
Yeah, there's a system for it. So,
that's nice.
And it's it's countrywide.
That's awesome.
If you're jumping borders, I can still see. And it'll actually show me what you filled. It'll show me who filled it or who wrote it, rather, what provider wrote it, who filled it, what pharmacy. And it'll give you, it's funny that I don't know how they, I'm sure somebody's got an algorithm, but it actually gives a score to say whether this person is considered high risk for opioid.
Oh, that is interesting.
Yeah. So ever since that, I would say, like I say, in the last 5 years, ever since that's come out, minimal opportunities for people to doctor shop.
Okay.
Yeah.
Well, that's good. I'm glad to know they came up with something like that.
Yeah.
I wonder if that came out of all these settlements where the opioid companies they were paying billions of dollars in penalties.
Yeah, it's definitely changed that aspect of my practice because it used to be a little bit of there's a little bit of anxiety involved because you certainly don't want to add to somebody's problem.
Right.
And then, like I say, I've got multiple stories about it, but ever since they've put that in, it's very nice. And it's nice to come in if somebody tells me a story and says, no, I haven't had any of these in the last 2 years. This tooth's been hurting this first time. And then I can pull it up and say, well, you just saw Dr. R.
Right.
And he wrote this prescription for this. And it says you filled that yesterday. It's good.
Well, that's great. That's great. That's great.
Dialogue.
Well, that's good. And I think I've seen, and we do some criminal law here, mainly family law. I think we've seen less of the opioids being a problem in the oxys than we were seeing 5 to 7 years ago and leading to divorces and stuff. So maybe they really have curbed what's out there. And maybe some of these lawsuits have actually worked. And now these pills are being limited to people who actually need them.
Yeah, they've done a really good job with that. And they actually, I think it was the same time frame, about 5 or 6 years ago, they're requiring now to keep my dental license. You have to have a certain amount of continuing education credit to keep your license and to get it renewed. One of those hours has to be, there's an opioid course that we have to take every single year.
Well, that's good. That's good.
They require that now.
Well, that's good. Yeah. And then the North Carolina Bar requires me to get a substance abuse hour every year, partly because of lawyer issues personally, but also in recognizing it and helping get your clients help if they come in. And we see a lot of people with substance abuse issues here, and that's led to their marriages falling apart. And now they're getting divorced, and we try to help them so that they can we might not be able to save their marriage, but they're still going to be a parent, and they need to be able to be a productive parent to their child and a productive member of society. And we try to get them to places that can help them. But ultimately, they have to decide they want the help. Yeah. So I guess as we wrap this thing up here, and I know you're from Garner and all that, but you've had a business here in Johnston County for 22 years. What do you love most about Johnston County?
Well, the same things that I loved about Garner when I was growing up. It's just got that small town feel. I like the rural feel. I like the small town feel. I like the fact that I'm going to, walk out of my office and I may walk into the store across the street and see, a couple of my patients and, be like, hey, Jonathan, how's this going?
Right.
How are the kids?
Right.
Yeah. That's what I love about it. And it's, even though I guess you would technically consider it rural, even though
it's growing so
fast. And I think on your questionnaire, it said something about, there's nothing I can really sit there and say, I wish we had this, because anything you could possibly think of, it's on its way.
Right.
If it's not here, it's going to be.
No, it's coming. And 540 is going to be finished anytime now. Yeah. And the new intersection at 4042 is going to be open. Both of those could be open by the end of this year, end of 2024. Yeah. That's going to change things. Yeah. And whether people like it or not, that's going to make Garner ITB or inside the belt line.
That's right.
And the first time somebody said that to me, I just laughed because I don't think of Garner as an ITB type place like around Broughton High School and stuff like that when I think of inside the belt line Raleigh. But Garner is going to be inside the belt line. There's no ifs, ands, or buts about that. So how can people get in touch with you in your office if they hear this and they want to find out more about the services you provide?
The easiest thing to do would be to go to the website. It's drtimsims.com. So drtimsims.com, or, Google me.
Right. Well, what's your phone number?
919-773-3050.
All right.
So 3050.
Well, cool. Thank you. Well, we'd like to thank Dr. Sims for coming in and talking to us today about his practice and dentistry and the AI coming to dentistry. I found that fascinating. I hope that everybody listening, found this fascinating as well. We do ask that if this is your first time listening to this podcast, that you like, subscribe, or follow this podcast wherever you're seeing it, whether it be on Apple Podcasts, Spotify, YouTube, or any of the cuts that we have on TikTok, LinkedIn, Facebook, stuff like that, so that you'll be aware of future episodes of the Best of Johnston County Podcast. The Best of Johnston County Podcast comes out on every Monday, so be looking for a new episode every Monday. And if you've not listened to some of the previous episodes with county commissioners like Patrick Harris or the Parks and Rec Director, Adrian O'Neill, I think you would find those fascinating. We also had Donna White on previous episodes. And if you're into sports, we also had Scott Raleigh, the Cleveland football coach, on a previous episode. So go back, listen to some of those. If you love Johnston County as much as I do love Johnston County, I think you're going to love this podcast. We love bringing this to you. And until next time, this is your host, Jonathan Breeden.
That's the end of today's episode of Best of Johnston County, a show brought to you by the trusted team at Breeden Law Office. We thank you for joining us today, and we look forward to sharing more interesting facets of this community next week. Every story, every viewpoint adds another thread to the rich tapestry of Johnston County. If the legal aspects highlighted raise some questions, help is just around the corner at www.breedenfirm.com.